Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Till. I am a partner at Infosys Consulting. I've been there about 11 years. I work for a practice we call AIX, and AIX is essentially smashing together the opportunity and the potential with AI with human experience. I've got a background in human experience design, and I'm really sort of quite concerned and keen to make sure we inject the human into all of these conversations, because there's a lot of talk about being AI first, and some of the people I've hired and sort of the team I've built over the years, we tried to rename our practice recently within Infosys. There was a lot of resistance to calling it AI first. So some people who thought, well, hold on, we're not AI first yet. There are humans on this planet, and we don't want the machines to take over. So hopefully it should give you a little bit of encouragement that some of us working in technology companies are actually probably trying to do the right thing and also do the thing right as well. So I'm actually going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole on this one. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to explore the art of the possible, which is a bit of a well-worn phrase, but I'm going to do it with a little bit of care. So this is what we're going to do today, but I won't go through the contents. I'll just get it going as we go. So look, decision. People make 30,000 of them a day. 226 of those apparently, I mean, it's a very specific number, of course, are about food in general. So you're probably thinking about that right now, so I'll try and finish on time. Decision is about judgment. Judgment requires knowledge and skills and application, which is behaviour. And so if you think about frontline public servants, so police officers, nurses, social workers, the decisions they make in the world of work could have a significant impact on them and the others around them. I mean, we can think why. I don't need to explain. So these decisions are also made under conditions of stress and cognitive load. I've heard, cognitive science mentioned earlier on today. So, if you're under stress, decision making gets a lot harder as well. So how might we, so a bit of design thinking here, how might we use generative AI to make our public sector personnel better to make effective decisions? It's not just about efficiency. Can we help them drive professional outcomes and influence the right outcomes in their profession? Can we do it positively? So we're going to explore some key drivers, some themes, some concepts, and try and bring those to life a little bit. So I am going to do a little bit of theory at the beginning. Sorry about this. Bit of a disclaimer, because we're being quite playful with this, we're probably pushing the boundaries a bit. And actually, and I'm not going to have a lot of texty slides, I promise you, but our disclaimer is really just to sort of underline the fact, because we're being playful, we want to push the art of the possible. We have to tread a fine line between actually playing with some of these concepts and being responsible as well. So we have pushed this quite far, and we're going to have a scenario around a police officer and what that might look like in the future with support from GenAI to help them make effective decisions. So bear with me anyway. But some starting thoughts. We're not going to have to train on systems and processes to perform the repetitive, low value adding tasks. The nature of training is going to change as well. We're going to need to work and learn to work alongside agents and generative AI, and the nature of courseware design and learning is going to change as well. And I think, to build on a theme that came up before, perhaps counterintuitively, there are going to be further opportunities in human factors as well. So, for example, we can help people reduce their stress. We can help them increase their communication skills and their empathy as well. I'm a bit of a sci-fi fan, and there's a slogan for an Android manufacturing company in one of my favorites, and it's more human than human. And I think this is something, and some people in the audience will probably know what that is, and well done to you if you do. But I think that's a really nice slogan to carry along with us. If we can make ourselves more human by using AI, isn't that a great thing? I've heard a black box mentioned as well. So a lot of people talk about AI, a lot of people talk about Gen AI. I'm not sure everyone knows what happens inside the black box, but we're making inputs, text, audio, computer vision. Computer vision is what is in an Amazon Go shop. It's also what's helping a Tesla car make decisions about whether to stop, swerve, or do whatever it needs to do. And it's actually going to be made even more powerful by edge computing. What you can't do is send off to a central server in the cloud a split-second, life-affecting decision if you need to swerve a car. So you need to have some of this componentry and this capability within the actual technology and physically on board, And I'll show a bit of wearable tech later as well, just a concept. And I think that's really important as well. It's not just about the data, it's not just about the AI, it's also about the enabling technology behind to make sure that this works as well. And the outputs, audio generators, GPTs, image generators, try as I might, actually Mid-Journey couldn't come out with anything better than a mountain to show what an image looked like when it comes out of a black box. And then you've got video generators as well. Who's played with some of the video or image generators in the audience? Yeah, Mid-Journey, DALL-E, these sorts of things. They're great fun, aren't they? And actually, I think a point I heard earlier, the better the inputs you make and the prompts you make, the better the outputs. It forces you to actually be very precise and specific about what you want. So there's this GenAI black box, right? Stuff goes in, stuff happens, stuff comes out. But I'm not going to spend too long actually trying to sort of unpack all of this, because I know a few people have done that already this morning, and really quite well as well. But just to sort of level set us, what I was trying to do is really simplify, and this is part of my mission, really trying to simplify and encourage people to understand what some of these things can do. And I should have put GPT next to NLP and LLM. So NLP is just, that's what a chatbot does, natural language processing. LLM, it's just a bigger one. It's a bit like an Einstein chatbot, right? And a GPT is we know what GPT is because we've used ChatGPT, right? It's a type of LLM there. Predictive modeling is just, this is what weather forecasting has been sort of leveraging for many years. And then we have other concepts as well, which we're familiar with, automation, machine learning, and one which I'm going to talk about a little bit more around agentic systems as well, which is lots of smart agents working together, but also with humans in a system that tries to deliver an outcome or outcomes. So here you go. Here are some of the sort of level setting things that we think are in the black box. I'm not going to unpack all of those, but those are the sorts of things we're going to be talking about today. So responsible AI, we have a responsible AI office in emphasis, and what's quite interesting, and I'll go to the sort of legal slide next, and where we are in terms of regulation and law. What's quite interesting is it is the technology companies, and I heard this mentioned earlier, it is the technology companies and large enterprises and academic institutions who are doing probably some of the most work in trying to establish these common principles. The law is actually catching up, and everyone's being very careful about this and trying to do the right thing. But we can, absolutely 100% be sure that plenty of nefarious actors out there are actually trying to use AI to undermine our way of life and everything else. So we have to get on this right away. I'm not going to unpack this whole slide because everyone's, not everyone, but we had some great presentations earlier on in which we covered some of these topics. But the key things here are just making sure that we don't have we have no explainability black box. We need to be able to establish what's happening inside the black box. Plus, we need to make sure there's a human in the loop. And I think this has already come up, so I won't labour the point. EU Act, sorry, another texty slide. We're going to get some slide with some images, by the way. So EU Act at the moment classifies, and that came into force, I think, August. I think I can just about see with my glasses there. August of this year, risk categories, so systems and processes that have actually risk categories. So I think when you're looking to something which is around training and delivering a training curriculum using GenAI, you tend to be in the high or the limited risk category, right? And certainly if you're looking at nurses and doctors and police, for example, in public sector, you will be in that high category, because if something goes wrong, there is going to be some sort of consequence. The UK picture is catching up at the moment. I don't know what the actual timeline is on the legislation, but I know that I do have. Where's Rahul? Rahul from our Responsible AI office. He's asked me not to ask him to come come up on stage, but he's around if you want to ask him a question later about responsible AI. So there is some work being done, but it's a work in progress. So I've got 4 A's here, which I think quite nicely describe the sort of the opportunity or the promise for generative AI in training. So the first one is around acceleration. So, you know, that's to actually increase learning loops and make sure we get there as quickly as we can, not for the sake of it, but where something might be laborious or we need to get productive very quickly, that could be quite important. Adaptation is another one there. I think that's already come up today. So I'll talk about that a bit more. Amplification. The company I work for is, its slogan is amplify human potential. And I think we believe in that. I think that's quite a nice thing for a technology company. Although I think Google got rid of its do no evil slogan a while ago. I don't know what that actually signifies, but I'm glad we're coming into play now. Augmentation, really quite important as well. How can we use generative AI and technology to just help us and come on the way? We've talked about co-pilots today already. So just looking at that in terms of how that works in a classic learning loop, I just want to do a few builds to sort of explain what it might mean for us. So we can do augmented learning. We can do augmented doing. So when we're actually trying to apply something we've learned in the classroom or in a simulation, we can actually have that doing augmented with extra guidance. And we can get real-time feedback, of course, from the sort of the middle of our sort of experience and our work and what we're doing to actually inform that augmentation and help us get better in the future. And we can have augmented reflection. We could probably have augmented feedback as well. I don't know why I left that out, but there you go. There's augmented reflection as well. Can we be coached after the fact using GenAI tools to help us understand whether the learning was effective and what our actual performance could be? So this is the sort of stuff that I want to explore a little bit later. And then we can have adaptive content, right? So the content actually right in the middle of the training can be adapted around your particular needs. And it's very much a sort of data problem, which I've heard mentioned before as well. But that is the opportunity for us right now. And then finally, adaptive learning pathways. So probably no surprise there. Everything can be adaptive, everything can be accelerated, everything can be augmented, and of course, the sort of net effect of that is we're sort of amplifying the potential that we could be. Right, so does anyone know the Ebbinghaus curve, the forgetting curve? So this is probably, if you're a pedagogue in the audience, you probably know this, and it's probably one of the first things you learn. So there is a new concept now, I mean, not so new in micro-learning, but we've got micro-learning and nano-learning actually being a really good opportunity for how we might actually increase the effectiveness of learning and then application and retention as well as you sort of drift away, if you like, from the sort of formal knowledge training in the classroom, in the simulation. You actually get into the work environment, actually apply that. So micro-learning, so the sort of 2 to 5 minute chunk. GenAI is great at generating sort of short bits of content. Now it's also a great opportunity to leverage GenAI to deliver that sort of micro-learning and even nano-learning, you know, that just-in-time thing, just when you need it. So I've got a bit of a scenario where I'll go through that in a little bit more detail a bit later. So what I want to do is just talk about some profiles, right? So we look at the police officer, the nurse or the social worker, and you look at the sort of training costs that's associated, and they're probably low estimates, to be honest, and this doesn't include, obviously, the cost to the individuals of sort of going through the training and their living and all that sort of stuff. The training length takes a long time, and I think actually if you're a police officer, you know, you can go in as a degree entrant. You can also do a police officer degree as well. I think the Open University does some work around this area. So there's a lot of investment here. And then your probation beyond that is quite a long time as well. So there's huge investment in actually getting people being as effective at making the right decisions in their job and, you know, getting on with it. And then if you look also at the sort of core applications and tools that any of these individuals use in their working life, then you've got at least 10 platforms that, you know, people could use on a sort of week in, week out basis. This is what my analyst tells me. And if anyone wants to know where we've got some of this data, then just speak to me later. I'm very happy to go and fetch the source. And then finally, I don't think this is an overall a blanket administration burden for everyone. There's a there's a potential for quite a lot of police officers and nurses and social workers' lives to be taken up by the admin burden. So this isn't just about what we can do for them, it's what we can help them not have to do when they're doing jobs in the future. So they can focus on high value tasks, being empathetic, communication, empathy, community engagement, all these sorts of things that come up as requirements and needs for these professionals here. And then they've also got, across each of these constituent audiences here, these sort of learners or trainees, there is a common thread running through this around innovation and technology. So, the time's ripe for actually doing something quite interesting. Obviously, we need to tread quite carefully. So, I'm only going to do the police officer and the nurse, because the social worker, if I do her at the end, isn't really going to add a great deal than we've already learned. But you can sort of see here, the copper in the late 19th century probably had a truncheon and then got a telephone and a typewriter and had to learn some basic communication skills, how to spell, how to write, how to use a typewriter, etc., etc. But as you go on, the actual, this is driven to a great extent by technology, but the overhead, the level of complexity, the level of specialisation for a police officer is hugely increasing. I won't say it's exponential because that's very misused, it's overused, but if you think about what we have to do to get people productive, up and running, not just walking around the streets trying to arrest drunkards, which is probably where things started, there's going to be an increased cognitive load on people when they're out there expected to perform. They may be under stress, they may have longer learning pathways, there may be more risk there of making the wrong decision. And actually, we do hear, of course, about attrition and burnout in the public sector, in our public servants, the police and the nurses, the people who help us sort of live and become healthy and keep us safe. It's not a great story. Maybe we could do something there. Here's the nurse. Same story, really. I won't labour the point, but I think all the slides will be available later, won't they, John? Is that right? Yeah, so yours to keep. And then finally, value drivers. And actually, they're quite similar across all of these different these organisations as well. Collaboration is going to make them more efficient, especially interagency cooperation. And actually, you can see, and we've got a scenario here which is going to look at interagency cooperation as well. But retention, I mentioned that before, costs front and centre of mind, obviously with the new government coming in this year, reducing that admin burden, and then reducing the training duration, and also sustainability has been mentioned as well today. So, we can get people productive quicker, spend less time, money on the training. There are sustainability impacts as well. And then finally on the left there, one of my team came up with this concept of taking the robot out of the human. This sort of builds on the more human than human. So if we can actually use AI to take the sort of robotic, repetitive tasks away from people, wouldn't that be a great thing to help people become more empathetic and help them in their communication skills and their sort of interpersonal engagement and decision making and judgment? That would be a great thing. So I'm going to start with a police officer, and she is the hero here today, this police officer. This is wearable tech today. All of this is available. If you look at a wrist monitor, I've got an Apple Watch here. It can tell me about my breathing rate. It can tell me about my heart rate. It will tell me when I've been using my drill, when I'm doing my DIY, and I've got too many decibels coming in. So that text there, we have, the smart glasses aren't a sort of standard bit of kit, but the technology is there, right? Edge computing is there. It's not all integrated. It hasn't been brought together. The earpiece is a piece of technology that most police officers have now. It's, imagine if you could pipe a co-pilot through there just to guide and mentor somebody at the right time. Could we make it connect with different systems? If you have a co-pilot, could we make it connect with other systems that are helping doing other things? And then you've got your body cam. So what if we could use computer vision and edge computing to assist somebody in their daily work, right? And I'm not suggesting we're sort of profiling people on their ability to, or their potential and propensity to actually execute some sort of crime like Minority Report. I'm talking about how do we help that police officer do her job better. So we have a scenario which is built around what we call an agentic system. So there you go, that's the definition on the screen there. So not only can they create scenarios, they can help manage and understand what's going on in the real world. So it's a bit like having the personal trainer, as it says here, and a role-playing partner and a wise advisor all in one. And we've sort of broken this down into a few things. But before we go into how we've broken it down, just bear with me. The capabilities in an agentic system, so they can perceive, they can act, they can take actions, they can reason, right? An agent can reason and make a decision and help apply that decision, and it can also learn as well. So there's machine learning in there as well. So that's one of the characteristics in an agentic system, sometimes called a multi-agent system. They've also got certain behaviors. So we have autonomy. So they can do this without necessarily intervention, right? And we need to be careful about giving them all that autonomy. They can be proactive, so they can look for trigger points in data or over time or other means that don't require a human to ask them to take action. They can interact with other agents, they can interact with humans, so you can build a system with them. They're oriented on a very specific goal, really. So you have an agent for a specific thing that's really good at that thing. And that allows you to help it specialize and become especially good at that thing. And then they're adaptable, right? So they can actually change their behavior as they go over time. So let's look at that agentic system. So here's the police officer. So she has a co-pilot. I think when I compressed my PowerPoint for sending to John, it actually sort of made it a little bit low res, but you get the point. She's a sort of almost like a shadow police officer there. She's working with the police officer, giving her personalized feedback, helping with her continuous learning, accessing some of the other systems that are sitting behind in the agentic systems, and creating a safe environment for practice when practice and coaching is needed as well. Then we've got another cluster as well here, which is what we call the agentic learning tools. And this is, these are concepts, these are ideas, but this is all possible, right? So the scenario generator creates realistic scenarios. The performance evaluator, and I think we saw some performance evaluation ideas and concepts before, assesses performance, right? On what basis? Is that a scorecard, a framework, a competency framework? What is it? Who knows, right? A feedback loop collects and analyzes the feedback as well. But there are some key considerations, of course, with responsibility and responsible AI hat on. So we need to be careful about when we're building scenarios and building our knowledge base about bias and stereotyping, and include diverse data sets in there as well that reflect real world scenarios. And maybe sometimes you might need to tweak them, because what's happening in the real world is not what we want to actually do. And you could probably think of some examples there. Human review is important. Scenario diversity is important as well. Not having the same scenario over and over again, right? Because people need diversity too. And I don't mean ethnic diversity. I mean actual diversity of thought and ideas and physical things happening as well. There needs to be realism and practicality, so relevance to real things happening in the world. We need to make sure that the ethical principles are built in, and there needs to be a feedback loop as well. So we need to make sure all those things are put in. And then you've got the human judgment and accountability challenges as well that we need to build in too. So here's the other side of the agentic learning system, right? So this is where we've got what we call our guidance and support agents. So this is, there's an orchestration agent that's actually running the system and calling into play all the different agents to talk to the co-pilot and help the learner, the police officer there. You have a biomarker agent that's possibly listening out for stress signals and giving feedback and giving a report to check people, whether that's sort of in real time or whether that's over the course of a week, and making recommendations about guided meditation, learning, taking a break or whatever. So you see where it's sort of expanding the concept of what sort of guidance and learning and training is. You also have your coach and mentor. So every police officer, and I think certainly every nurse, will have a coach or mentor at some point. But imagine if you could sort of amplify that capability a little bit more, right, and make it even more effective. So look, in terms of bias and ethics, I mean, we have this sort of biometric agent on a corner there. Obviously, we need to be really careful about how we apply that. The biometrics aren't there to sort of be harvested. They're more to actually understand what's happening in terms of people. You know, you can tell people's empathy by looking at the frown on their face. You can tell if they're scared and whether they need support. Or whether actually they're going to be approachable. And this is quite useful when you're guiding people and training them in how to, for example, de-escalate a situation where someone has a knife. And we're gonna actually look at that in a minute. And then I'm just going to go on here. And these aren't so much training. This is more of this is the area of what we're going to do less of, right? So can we do smart admin? Can we, I mean, transcription technology is pretty well understood. Could we have the smart notebook? Could we have video analytics helping provide empathy reports for the police officer or the, give a report on the person who's in an incident and whether we need to be more empathetic and smiley when we're dealing with someone. Maybe we don't know. We just don't smile enough. Who knows? Smart transcription there is sort of related to this sort of incident reporting, and then evidence management is important as well. So really important. I think probably a couple of the really important pieces here is around admissibility in court and objectivity and making sure we record the right thing. And this is really where that sort of black box and making sure it's explainable comes into play. So there you go. There's a lot of sort of theory, and hopefully I've got a little bit of time just to walk through a little bit of a scenario. What I'm going to do is just talk about this one, and I've just got the disclaimer there again, right? So we have used in the team that built this, a lot of generative AI, actually. We use Midjourney heavily, had a lot of fun with it, but before I get into this, one of the interesting things was that one of the guys who's in my team got a little bit carried away with knife incidents, and there was a bit of gore, and it was getting a bit silly, and I said, look, fella, calm down. But he actually said to me that Midjourney, sort of after a while, got a little bit fed up with him asking for pictures of a young guy in a hoodie with a knife, possibly slightly injured, and he just sort of blocked him and said, I'm not going to give you this stuff anymore. So it's just an example of how some of the technology platforms are already building some responsibility in, and we can see that coming through now and again. And you can try and test it a little bit, test the boundaries yourself and have a bit of fun if you want. So anyway, here's our scenario. Here's the classroom training. So here we go. We've got our police officer. She's got the orchestration agent is just set up to sort of bring in the other agents. And then she's got we have the agentic learning tools, a knowledge base and sort of curriculum design agent has brought together the latest best practice, the guidelines in de-escalation. So that's the training she's doing at the moment. And it also brings in the very latest, so not just the sort of standard curriculum, what you need to learn, but some of the learnings that have actually flowed in from de-escalation situations of late that have also had some sort of human in the loop, I would imagine, as well. Then we have the scenario generator. So it looks at that knowledge base, creates appropriate learning objectives. And within this sort of part of the learning pathway in the curriculum, and then it generates a scenario that's specifically configured toward our learner there, not only the sort of the baseline learning that is needed, but also the stuff where she in particular might need specific help or support too. So it's doing that very much in tandem with a few sort of inputs to get the right thing out. And then there's a performance evaluator, so that captures the performance of the student and the performance of the scenario, a bit like I think what Rosemary was presenting earlier on. And then it feeds it back into the knowledge base and make sure that the data is sort of aggregated in some way, and of course a responsible way, so that we can draw and infer conclusions about how good the training is and how effective it is. Right, and then you've got a little bit of a session with your virtual coach and mentor at the end of the day in the overall agentic learning system. So, scene 2, she's on a call out, she's on probation, she gets a call. So at the point of the call, the orchestration agent's saying, I see you've got a call out, it looks like a potential de-escalation, and it's going, right, okay, what's her competency like? When did she do the training? Well, how far away was it? Right, and so what it does is it says, well, actually, I've looked at the knowledge base, I've confirmed where she is with that, and actually the coach works with the mentor agent the coach and mentor agent works with the co-pilot and builds some just-in-time refresher training. So this is back to sort of micro training and nano training, right? She might have done her de-escalation like 3 months ago, but what are those sort of top 6 things I need to remember? So it gets piped into my earpiece or my iPad, and then I go to the call out, right? So I'm assisted through the incident by the co-pilot. She's being fed by information from different agent types. And then actually the co-pilot saying, right, okay, flip up your visor. I know she's not wearing a visor in the scene. I couldn't get mid-journey to make it. And then it said, well, flipping up your visor, if you can see somebody and look them in the eye, it makes you a little bit more empathetic. So actually what the co-pilot is trying to do is make sure there's every single possible opportunity to de-escalate that situation and do it without it going into something we don't want to see. So there you go. It's going to guide that person. It's sort of telling her what's going on. There's a video analytics agent, looks at this person using computer vision, understands what's on the face. It's not anger, it's fear, right? It's fear. So the guidance is, look, I think you've probably got it under control because that person doesn't look angry like they're going to do something. So just keep going, do what you're doing. And then actually a smart transcript is being fed back, and it's actually the agent is looking at that smart transcript and saying, well, hold on a minute, you've repeated that command twice, right? So you've got 3, you shouldn't be repeating a command in a de-escalation situation more than 3 times. You shouldn't say it more than 3 times. So this is your running count. So I'm helping you keep that under control because you're under stress, right? Your cognitive load is large, you're focused on this very narrow thing right now in your field of view. I'm going to help you remember the right thing to do, right? And then the biomarker agent is just going, right, okay, just take a breath. Might help you just calm down a bit. I hear your breathing's good. You don't want a panic attack. Your breathing's heightening a little bit, and it's just helping along the way. And so let's just assume the incident gets de-escalated effectively. I haven't put a scenario for that actual part because it's probably not so pertinent, but let's assume it did, which is all good. The guy maybe got a little bit injured when he was arrested, a twisted arm or something, who knows. So afterwards, police officer, back in the van, back in the car, whatever, gets the opportunity to reflect, right? Reflection is a really important part of the learning loop. So there's an incident reporting agent that runs a transcript. All of a sudden, that work is taken off her. She can just look at the incident report and check it's okay. There you go. So there's a performance evaluation. So here we have stress markers. This is what you did that was really good. This is where you maybe needed some support. And then data from the incident is fed back into the knowledge base to strengthen the training curriculum there as well. And then there's a session with a coach and mentor just to reflect. Now it seems a bit full on just to have all that in the van or the car on the way back. So, but this is just, I'm being a little bit playful with some of this, but these are the sorts of opportunities, given that, very contrived scenario there, where maybe we can string together some things to help these people do their jobs more effectively and sort of reflect a little bit more as well. There you go, orchestration agent does some interagency work. So there's an interagency exchange with a hospital and a social worker. Of course, I can hear you thinking, oh, GDPR. So there you go. Young man's now being referred to the hospital. Now it is possible to do interagency collaboration. It is a strategic goal amongst all of these agencies. And if something's with consent and in the vital interest of somebody, their life is under threat, then it's perfectly possible to do that. And there's guidance there in the link there if you wanted to have a look later. So there you go. That's the end of it. We were going to play out a nurse scenario and a social worker scenario, make it really, big and epic, but that would have taken a long time, and I don't think we've got enough time today. And I know you want some lunch soon. So. Learning design impacts. I'm sure, are there any learning designers in the audience? Hey, shout out to learning designers. I got into the world of technology because a good mate of mine was doing learning design, building kiosks with giant laser discs back in the 1990s. You probably remember that. So anyway, learning design impacts. So less manual content creation, less static content development, fewer time-consuming revisions. Well, this is the promise, right? More curative. You get to not just be a creator, you can be a curator as well. Okay, so more personalization opportunities, more in terms of pedagogical design, continuous improvement, but also bigger overhead in ethical considerations and making sure we continue to think about what this actually means in terms of learning design. And then the organizational design impacts. So how are we going to adapt to incorporate generative AI into training? I think this probably is very much in tune with some of the other things I've seen this morning that probably did it more justice. So thank you to my colleagues who presented earlier on and did a great job of that, and I think covered this one very well. So that's it from me. Just a little bit of playfulness, as I said. We want people to become more human than human. I'm excited by the possibilities, but we need to explore those possibilities with care.